So, good morning, everybody. My name's Katie. I'm the events manager here at the CQI, and I'm just here to facilitate this session for you all this morning. We are delighted to be joined by Ben and by Shauna, who will introduce themselves in a moment. And we're going to be talking about leadership, stepping into quality management, leading with impact, and all the things that involves. So, we're going to hand over in a moment to Ben, who's going to do a short presentation on behalf of Shirley Parsons, who are a recruitment company with a specialist arm that looks after quality professionals. And then we will hear Ben's presentation brought to life with a different dimension with Shauna, who is going to talk about her personal experience as she has kind of developed her quality career. So I think that's probably enough from me for the moment. What I will say is if you do have any questions for Ben initially and then for Shauna, do use the Q&A box, which if you're on a laptop or desktop should be at the bottom of your screen. And I believe it on your phone also. So there is a Q&A box where you can pop any questions that you might have. We will answer those as we go along, and then we will have a discussion at the end with both Ben and Shauna. So pop your questions in there as they come up and we will address those once the initial presentations have been done. Don't pop your questions in the chat because there's a lot going on in the chat and sometimes they get lost. So do make sure that they go into the Q&A. And we have Leslie in the background who's also helping with some of those questions. Okay, so without anything further from me, Ben, I'll hand it over to you and we'll get started.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So welcome everyone. My name is Ben Heine. I'm one of the directors of Shirley Parsons. We're an international, I'll try and get all of this out, it's a bit of a mouthful, quality, health, safety, environmental and sustainability professional services organisation. So we're an international business with offices around the world, supporting both clients and candidates in their next job role or support building their teams. So I guess I'm coming at this to an extent from a recruitment kind of perspective. It's generally my perception when we're supporting clients and candidates in the executive search space is the things that we're asked to understand and identify when it comes to business making a very senior appointment in their leadership team. So while I feel this is relevant in the main to any walk of life, there are elements of effective leadership that very much play into the quality sphere, which is things such as continuous improvement, improving understanding through questioning, such as the 5 whys. So we'll see how we relate that as we go on. So I'm just going to share my screen. So as I said, this is leading with impact, and part of this is looking to identify the difference between leading and managing within an organization as well. So we want to focus on the leadership element, and that is the concepts, the practical differences and the strategies to enhance leadership skills for a greater impact. And I personally think that anyone is capable of becoming an effective leader. It's ultimately a large amount of it is understanding, as I say, the difference in that, wanting to be a leader, and then there is an element that you can kind of hone your skills and improve your leadership effectiveness as well. So just the brief overview of my part, that's understanding, as I say, the leadership within the quality professional sphere, exploring the differences between leading and managing, engaging in some interactive self-assessment activities, hopefully, and obviously discussing the ways to develop leadership skills within quality professionals as well. So to start off as well, what I'd ask is if everyone throughout this can just think about somebody that's been, in their opinion, an important modern day leader. And just think as well about your own tendencies towards leadership or management, and perhaps some of what we discuss, or I say, sorry, might highlight some of your strengths or possibly some areas of development as well. Just because of the number of people, it's been kind of hard to make this that interactive. So we'll start off with just defining leadership for quality professionals. So leaders will set out a long-term vision and they'll articulate that and the mission. So effective leadership requires vision, very clear communication, and motivation to inspire teams beyond just the technical skills that team possess. So great leaders, you'll generally find, can take people on a journey by inspiring them, and as I say, bringing that vision to life and making that correlation between what people are doing and how that what they're doing impacts on the mission of the company or the mission of that leaders. So generally you'll find that they're guiding teams to excellence as well. So leadership will focus on guiding teams, enabling teams to achieve those outstanding results. And that is in no small part through collaboration and support and being able to knit together all the different parts that is needed for a successful outcome. And as I say, a large part of leadership is, rather than just doing, is actually enabling, which we'll touch on later. So leaders will also drive ongoing improvement processes to enhance performance over time of their teams. Leaders are generally very, very curious as well, and they'll question the connection between the activities and the goal set when it comes to realizing that vision too. So as mentioned, and a lot of this is kind of going to be things that go over a couple of times, but it's very much around offering guidance and that framework of support and making sure that everyone is pulling in the same direction and everyone is able to correlate their role and what they do to the overall mission and vision of that organization. So generally that will be a leader will set the tone. So as I say, they'll define that organization's mission and the values of those as well. And that's really important, as that will trickle down to how people work and how they work together as well. And generally you might find that people have an emotional attachment to the values that are put in place as well. I've always found it's almost kind of this compass that helps to define the long-term strategy, and at the same time aligning that long-term strategy with short-term actions too. So you might find that without sort of true leadership, individuals or teams will work hard, but maybe in different directions. So as mentioned earlier, it's also about driving performance. So leaders may set the goals and the expectations. They'll motivate employees or teams by linking their individual role to the organization's success and mission. And then they will always look to celebrate that as a team together as well. So strong leadership has a direct impact on productivity and efficiency too. And then another very important role of a leader is culture. So leaders will shape the environment and the culture through their behavior, through their communication, and through the values that they install. And a lot of those values should look to influence trust, teamwork, innovation, ethical standards, and create a healthy culture in which it's okay to try things, maybe obviously not be successful at first, but learn and support. And that is, in my opinion at least, a healthy culture that will improve retention and improve engagement as well. So another element of it is managing change. Life, businesses, the macro environment is always changing, and now more than ever we're kind of seeing large unexpected changes in the industry or the markets that Shirley Parsons work in. So it's been able to take on those changes, also be able to utilize, be curious around technology, and really help teams upskill and adapt. So providing clarity, reducing resistance to change when it happens. So as an example, we're seeing the emergence of new technology. Obviously, everyone hears about AI. As a business, we're looking to, and a lot of our clients are looking to see how they can utilize that technology to drive improvements and efficiencies. So is that element of curiosity from leaders, because ultimately, if the leaders aren't driving such things, then we tend to find that it's not being embedded throughout the organization. Another key part of leadership would be the development of talent. So good leaders will mentor and coach, and they'll create opportunities for growth. I think they're always looking to build up skills within the teams that they work with, and ultimately they're looking to prepare future leaders. There's a lot of our clients will talk about succession planning and almost making sure that there is no sole dependency on one person, that they've created a culture and embedded a culture that means if any individual was taken out for whatever reason, that culture is bigger than that one person, and that it's so embedded it will continue without them. And again, this will very much install a kind of teamwork environment and reduce any sort of turnover as well. So the other accountability, I guess, of a leader would be decisions and aligning those with the goals and values. So they are always, in my opinion, going to hold themselves to account, and obviously others responsible for results as well. And accountability will prevent inefficiency, and it builds that trust with stakeholders. So it's setting that goal, supporting people to achieve that goal, but ultimately holding them account to that as well. So if I just move on to my next slide, sorry. So we've gone through a lot of this already, the key traits of effective leaders. And this is why I think anyone, if they want to be a leader, can be a leader. And a lot of the time when we're working with clients, the thing that is hardest for them to understand, if you think about the process that we go through for recruiting, say, a quality director or a CEO or whatever it might be, is the first time, 9 times out of 10, that they interact with that individual is on a piece of paper. It's that person's history and achievements. But a huge amount of leadership is emotional intelligence. So we're asked to make sure that we can understand more about that individual, their leader, and how they lead, and as I say, that emotional intelligence. So generally, we're asked to understand and be able to portray when they've used strategic thinking to achieve their vision. They're able to articulate that in such a way that it inspires others, and thinking long term. Rather than just navigating short-term challenges, it's about having that long-term goal. We will often find that leaders are very confident in themselves. And by that, I don't mean they know everything, they're arrogant. What they do have is an authentic belief in their vision. So they don't feel threatened. They want to surround themselves by the very best that they can find. They don't have a need to feel the smartest in the room. And that's because they want to learn and they want to understand. So they'll have very high levels of emotional intelligence generally. And with that comes self-awareness. So they understand their strengths and their weaknesses and triggers. And again, they will look to make sure that they're always building teams and understanding others' strengths and weaknesses to make sure that they've got that strong unit together that can compensate where there may be a weakness in one person is a strength in another. And with the emotional intelligence as well is empathy. So they can read and respond to different emotions of different people. The more you dive into leadership, you'll find that there's many different forms of leadership. And that can be anything from inspirational, situational, depending on what's happening. And so generally leaders are very adaptable, and it becomes, it's almost second nature to them, but it is a skill that you can develop, which is ultimately how to understand the people you're working with and you're engaging with to support them best. So communication with leaders, obviously they need to be able to articulate their vision, but they also need to be able to listen, take on feedback, as well as just communicating, which I'll touch on again later. but they're able to adapt their communication style to different audiences, and ultimately able to make complex ideas as simple as possible so that everyone can support that. We find that leaders are generally very high levels of integrity. So they model honesty and ethical behavior. And ultimately, that's because, as I said earlier, they're authentic. So they're not looking to please or seek respect from others. And they take responsibility, personal responsibility for the outcomes, both positive successes and maybe where there's been failures as well. Generally, we'll find that leaders are decisive, so they have conviction in their belief. And I'm sure people have heard the old saying, sometimes it's better to make a decision than no decision. So leaders will make their decisions based on that long term, how it correlates to their long term vision as well. And obviously that means that at times a large amount of resilience, they stay steady through that. Ultimately, when you're setting that kind of long term vision, people look up to you. So when things do go off course, you're their, I guess, emotional kind of steadfast, if you like. They want to see that if things are hard, you still have belief in that. And that gives confidence and optimism to everyone else as well. And then I said earlier, they're continuously learning. So they're always seeking feedback as well. They invest in self-development. And when it comes to feedback, it's not just looking for people to be positive about their feedback. Generally, leaders don't always get things right. As I said, they want to surround themselves by experts. So where there is improvement areas or things that could be different, they'll listen, they'll take that on board. And we find that leaders, as I mentioned earlier, are adaptable as well. So this part, just looking at leading versus managing, so the difference between the two. And it doesn't have to be that one is at the expense of the other as well. But it's just understanding as I say, the contrast between leaders, managers, and how that helps professionals adapt the right mindset and behaviors as well. So if we look at the characteristics of a leader versus a manager, and maybe a couple of kind of examples. So a leader, for instance, might focus on the vision, inspiration, and change. And the manager more focuses on the process, the execution, and the stability of that as well. And the reason for that is the leader's setting the direction and is looking at where are they going and why are they going that way. Whereas a manager may organize that work and they're looking to answer, how do we get these things done efficiently to get us there? So you might, again, in terms of leadership versus management, leadership will be a long-term vision and goal, whereas management is generally more the short to medium term, the focus on the daily operations and the results to get to that long-term goal. When dealing with people, a leader will inspire, motivate, and empower people to achieve more generally than they thought they could, whereas a manager managing is more directing and controlling and ensuring that people are meeting those expectations as well. So another difference between leading and managing is the risk and change. So a leader would embrace that risk. As I said earlier, they have that conviction in their goal. So they drive innovation and they challenge the status quo. They'll always be questioning why and how that impacts on the goal, and is there a better way of doing it? And a manager will be looking to minimize that risk, looking to maintain order and ensure consistency as well. So true leadership, we find, relies on influence more than anything. It's influence and trust and inspiration and belief. So they don't need the on paper authority in order to deliver results and have people support them. So a managing is more reliant on authority, the structure, and the processes. So just those examples that I mentioned earlier as well is generally how leaders and managers will enact their roles differently in projects, the decision-making processes during challenges, the innovation, and ensuring compliance as well. So as I said earlier, I think that anyone, if they want to be an effective leader, can develop the skills that's needed for effective leadership. And obviously we've mentioned long-term visions and so on, and these don't have to be huge, enormous, we're going to land on Mars or something like that. These can be, well, longer term, smaller goals and visions. But in terms of looking to develop from management styles into leadership styles, it is shifting a focus from delivering a task towards a vision. So as I mentioned earlier, managers will focus on how to get things done. Whereas a leader will be questioning why things are done in that certain way. So it's about asking the bigger questions. Where are we heading? And what impact is this going to make? And it's learning to connect the daily activities to the long-term goal and inspiring others in that vision as well. Emotional intelligence, as mentioned earlier, is something that our clients are always looking for us to understand and highlight. So it's really knowing your strengths, knowing what your blind spots are as well. It's understanding and caring what motivates people. So for me, caring and wanting to be a good leader is a large part of leadership. It's all the things we've mentioned, but it's also not necessarily always putting yourself first. It's wanting to do the right thing by others as well, and caring about those supporting you. So a large amount of it is the relationship building, is able to earn trust and people wanting to do something, not just because they're told to do it, but they buy into that goal and that vision, and they understand, they have an emotional connection to it. So generally people will follow leaders because they want to. It's not that they have to. So developing that influence, as mentioned, is about how you treat people as well. It's how you communicate with people. It's the respect and trust that you will install in people. It's inspiring them and building people up to make sure they're always challenging themselves to achieve more than they thought that perhaps they could achieve as well. And that will always inspire people to want to follow you as well. I say always, that is what we found anyway. Embracing change and innovation. So as I said, managers will look to maintain stability, whereas leaders can drive change, and that change can be uncomfortable. Some people are more adaptable to change than others, and it's understanding who you need to support more perhaps in that change. And leaders generally, you'll find, are quite comfortable with uncertainty, experimenting and taking calculated risks, and it's enabling and supporting your team to innovate rather than just follow the status quo. And our CEO always bemoans when somebody says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In his mind, that is something that stops people from developing or actually experimenting to improve things as well, which is something that a leader will always look to do. As I said earlier, it's empowering others as well. One of the things that I was taught was that there is no higher price paid than giving people experience. And ultimately by that, it means learning on the job. It's giving people the room and that safe space to actually make mistakes. It's rather than micromanaging, you're delegating tasks meaningfully and helping people upskill and deliver those tasks as well. So generally a leader will always be thinking, as I said earlier, about how can I create more leaders, not just workers, because workers will do it because they have to, whereas a leader will do it because they want to. And that's where you're going to be able to deliver the very best results. And then, as mentioned earlier as well, leaders are curious. They want to keep learning. So generally, if you want to develop in this area, is read, speak to leaders, understand your role models a little bit more, and look for mentors. Put yourself out of your comfort zone and take on stretch assignments and be asking for that feedback regularly. It's one of the fastest ways to grow, is understanding possibly what you could have done different, or what you could have improved on as well. As I say, if you're in the right environment, then you should be comfortable being able to make those mistakes and actually growing from them. So I did mention earlier how some traditional quality techniques play into leadership, and ultimately continuous improvement is a large part of that. A leader will cultivate environments where feedback's welcomed, learning is encouraged, and quality standards evolve through collaboration and innovation. And that's what you want from your team when you're leading them. So coming towards the end, in terms of leading with impact, we are able to be, as I mentioned earlier, a leader and a manager at the same time. And that can be quite a powerful balance. So when you're balancing leadership and management, it's combining the vision and the execution at times. So setting a clear direction from a leadership perspective. So here's where we want to be in 5 years, for example. And then on the management side is breaking that down into actionable plans, budgeting milestones, whatever that might be. So it could be, for instance, a CEO envisions entering a new market, and then as a manager is looking to create the rollout plan, as an example. When it comes to managing and leading at the same time, I mentioned earlier that a leader will look to hold people accountable as well. So a leader will motivate people by showing them how their work matters and how that correlates to the vision. And a manager's side will look to track that performance, hold people to their commitments. So it could be a team, for instance, team leaders, developing a team, motivating the team about a new product launch, while actually also ensuring that the deadlines are met from a management perspective as well. I mentioned earlier as well the traits of leaders. So within Shirley Parsons, we have a tool that we use, which is about capturing aspirations, and then there are 2 parts to it: a cognitive test and a emotional intelligence element test as well. And that's to understand your traits as an individual. So as you can see, as an example, on the right hand side, if you can see it, hopefully it's not too small, is where you might sit on a scale in terms of how goal orientated you are, versus impulsive, how comfortable you are leading versus following, etc. So we'll use this with our clients and our candidates, and the reason being is it's to help individuals understand more about them. So each report will provide information in an intuitive, and as you can see, I think hopefully a fairly easy to understand format. It's a percentile score across the 12 traits, and ultimately that will help everyone understand how well they may or may not match a position, where they're starting from, and where they may want to develop. So a large amount of the development is understanding the initial part. So if somebody, for instance, is coming up slightly lower on the motivational front, then it would be looking to change the way somebody may work. So setting focused goals rather than kind of moving towards a general direction and possibly hoping for the best. But we're doing this, as I say, both to help our clients understand more about the people they're meeting, but also the aspirations of those individuals. So obviously we want, whenever anyone's moving jobs, we want their move to help them achieve and realize their aspirations. And from the client side, that also obviously means more commitment and more longevity in a role as well. So we we're going to be, well, CQI will be sending out a link, and we're inviting everyone on this call to carry out their own MAP assessment. So you'll click on the link, it will be a personalized online assessment for you. It'll take you about 15-20 minutes, sat in a room quietly, and hopefully you'll find the results interesting. It will give you areas to question about yourselves and how you may want to develop certain aspects as well. So I don't know whether this was a good idea or not, but as I said earlier, if you can think about or thought about a leader that you felt was important, hopefully you did, and you can put that in the chat and see whether there's any large amounts of agreement on who a modern day great leader was. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Ben. That was really, really interesting. I have got a ton of questions, but we will hold off on those for the moment, especially while some of the comments are coming through on who people consider to be a good manager or leader. We'll perhaps go back to that in the chat a little bit later as well, just to see what some of the responses to that have looked like. So before we crack on with questions, I can see there's a few coming through, but do feel free to keep popping them into the Q&A box, and we will get to those shortly. We're going to introduce Shauna, who is going to talk just a little bit for us about her own experience, taking obviously on board some of the comments that Ben has already presented us with this morning. So Shauna, over to you.
Thank you for that. Has the screen come through, or have I broke it again?
No, it's all good. It's all good.
So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. My name's Shauna, and I am the Quality and Beyond Excellence Manager for Water and Environment at Jacobs. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a history about me. This is going to be the 5 minute of Shauna's life condensed type of thing. So on the screen, hopefully you can see a bit of a timeline of my life. So hopefully you don't find it too boring. The first job I had was as a horse riding instructor at a place called Penshaw Equestrian Centre. So as part of that job, obviously I got to work with lots of different people. And one of the main things was understanding how people learn things. That I believe has proved to be very, very beneficial when it comes to working in quality, because it helps you understand how people adapt to different things, which way they learn is going to change the way you kind of put a point across. You might explain things differently to different people. After that, you can see the picture of the dog with the graduation hat on. I didn't want to put a picture of me on there. That would have been a little bit too strange. So I graduated from Sunderland University with a BA in Fashion Product and Promotion. And then I went back the year later and done a master's in project management, because I decided project management was the way I wanted to go. And I was very lucky at the time, because I got to work with lots of different people, and that people from very different backgrounds. I was one of 2 people from the UK on our course, so there was a very diverse range of people, and I got to learn a lot of things. Definitely expanded my network further than I probably thought I ever would during that time as well. I then went to work for Northumbrian Water, and the main thing that I learned in that job was about continuous improvement, which is something that Ben obviously mentioned a little bit earlier in his slides as well, that it's a very important part when it comes to working in quality. And these are the things that I probably didn't realise would be transferable skills at the time. So it has proved to be quite interesting after that. So then I moved to work for a company called Wood as a project engineer. At that time, I joined the graduate scheme. So I had lots of fun, got to go on lots of outward bound courses, climb ridiculous trees and do things that you just very strange. but managed lots of multi-million-pound contracts, worked with project teams across different locations. Again, it was all about building networks, getting to know a lot of different people. And it was during that time when I was working for Wood, there was the acquisition for Wood to join Jacobs. At that time, very similar time as well, COVID hit, everything was a little bit up in the air. And I got a message to say there's a position come up in the quality team. Would you like to try it for 6 months? Then you can go back and work on projects again. And I thought, I'll give it a try. Haven't done it, something different. We'll see what happens. 6 months later, I didn't leave. They were stuck with me. And I haven't left ever since. I'm still in the quality team. So when I first joined the quality team, my role included a lot about looking after the business management system, sorting out certifications. So when we would get kind of Lloyd's Register come in to do our assessments for the different accreditations that we had, it was all about organising that. I worked a lot on collaboration for ISO 44001. And that was the time when I also started to work on audits as well as an internal auditor. As I said, that was the very beginning of that stage of work as well. And again, a lot of work on continuous improvement and looking at how we can adapt the way that we work towards targets to help meet targets, things like that. It was at that time I kind of thought, well, I'm very new into it. And a message had come round to say that the CQI had opened the awards portal. And being the nosy person I am, I thought, I'm going to have a nosy, see if there's anything I can put my name in the hat for, because why not? I might learn something out of it. So I did. I applied for the Emerging Talent Award. And to be honest, that has been one of the probably most beneficial things that I did at that time, because it allowed me to look back through my career and see things that had worked well, things that I definitely still needed to improve on. And then we went to the award ceremony. I managed to win that one, probably by the skin of my teeth, because there were some very great people put forward for the final as well. But that allowed me to network with a lot of people from, again, all over the world. And after that, not long, then moved into the role that I'm in now, so the Quality and Beyond Excellence Manager for Water and Environment. And this is kind of, I would say, put everything together into one thing. So everything that I've done in different roles is kind of all helped with the role I'm in now. So I'm now a IRCA lead auditor, which is very helpful when it comes to the amount of audits that we do as part of our jobs. Continuous improvement is, again, another thing that we're constantly working on, coming up with different strategies on how we can improve what we do for the business, not only for our operating unit, but for across the whole of Jacobs. I'm the framework quality manager for projects for Northumbrian Water. So again, that's a little bit like going back to where I basically first started my career, back with Northumbrian Water, but now I'm on the opposite side of the fence. Obviously, everybody who works in quality knows that we've got targets we've got to hit, and there's a lot of helping people reach those targets as part of the job. But not only focusing on targets, we also look at ways that we can improve quality within the business as well. So looking at helping people get the chartership in quality as well, helping give people the experience that they need to be able to go through that kind of route is something that is quite important for us as well. So I thought I would give you 2 key takeaways for what I've found most beneficial. Obviously, I mentioned earlier about the CQI awards. Absolutely, if you see something what you think, you know what, I'm not even sure how I would go with that, apply for it anyway, because I didn't have a clue. I applied for it and I learned probably more about myself doing that than I have doing most of the things. So I would definitely say, put your name in the hat and give it a go, see where you end up. And another thing, this links to the point what I think Ben mentioned earlier about the most important modern day leader. And I kind of say surround yourself with the right people. So for me, there's 4 leaders that I work with on a daily basis who I literally can't rate highly enough, because they've always got time. Doesn't matter how many silly questions you have, they're never silly enough, they'll always answer them. And they are literally known as the quality fellas, because they're the first people I would reach out to in our team. So yeah, surround yourself with the right people. And if things are getting boring, you're not surrounded by the right people. That's when you need to think, you know what, I'm ready for a different challenge. But I can definitely say things are not boring at my front at the minute. So hopefully you found that interesting, and I will pass back over to Katie.
Brilliant, thank you, Shauna. Great to hear. You know, we did not ask Shauna to give the awards a little nudge there, but obviously great to hear what a influential part that's had in your career. So we've got some questions that have come in through as well, and I have a few that I would like to kind of kick us off with. We've got about 15 minutes left, so we'll get through as many as we can. The first thing I wanted to ask, and this is one for you, Ben, but obviously, Shauna, you may also have some thoughts on this. I was really interested, you know, when you were talking about the kind of the traits for leaders, traits of leadership, and you mentioned emotional intelligence quite a few times as being a really important aspect of leadership, but you also mentioned that, you know, so many cases when people are hiring or people are kind of looking to take that next step in their career, that the first interaction is through a piece of paper. Now obviously some of the other traits that you mentioned, adaptability and communication skills, are much easier to get across on a sheet of paper, but how do you think you can communicate your emotional intelligence, or perhaps give a glimpse of that if people are, you know, the first interaction is via a sheet of paper?
Crikey, started off with an easy one, didn't you? I mean, from you know, I think part of that is how we would work with a candidate. Sorry. So when we're supporting a candidate, our job is to help make sure that we can give examples of emotional intelligence and where they've used that emotional intelligence. And part of it is, again, when we're looking to extract that, is setting the scene of what role that person played in it, how the different personalities were involved. But generally that would be questioning. As a quick get out as well, I would say that our MAP assessment, in terms of being able to measure on paper emotional intelligence as well. And the other, you know, there are things that are changing as well. Obviously, I did say 90% is on a piece of paper. We are finding more and more that there are other forms of interviews, techniques taking place, online interviews, video interviews, so on. But generally, I think it's understanding more about yourself and the interactions you've had and with who, and the impact that's had, and why. As I said, for me, one of the main parts of being a leader is caring and wanting other people to achieve. So highlighting that more than anything, rather than it just being about you.
It was a tough one, but you answered it well. So it wasn't that tough. Really interesting comments from both of you about continuous improvement. And Shauna, obviously you mentioned the awards as being a tool for you to reflect on your career, but how important do you think, you know, taking that aside, that kind of general reflection overall, kind of having that opportunity to take stock of where you come from, what you've achieved, and how it might then help shape where you go next? What kind of would you recommend in terms of really making that time for yourself?
I think it's really important, and something that we do quite a lot is work with mentors as well. So I'm quite lucky with the mentors that I've got. You can drop half an hour in every now and again if you need. You know, if you're stuck at a crossroads, you're not sure what you're doing with something, it's never a problem. You can do that then. But also we have the regular catch-ups where you do literally go through and sit and think, well, this is what I've done. Where can I improve on it? What have I done well, type of thing. And that just helps to shape what you're going to do going forward. And also, if, you know, when you're working with a mentor, they've got the work in the background, but they'll say, well, yeah, it would do you really good to do this extra bit of project work, or it would do you really good to work on this strategy, or to work on this specific target. And then it's a way of getting that extra work under your belt as well, and being able to improve that way.
And Ben, just kind of following on from that, I guess, the continuous improvement piece comes up a lot, the lessons learned, those reflections, on where things can perhaps be better next time, and what has worked really well. Would you say that that's something that really can come across well when you're recruiting and when people are looking for new people to bring onto the team?
Yeah, very much. I mean, ultimately, as I said, a lot of the time we will be looking, because our job ultimately is to help a candidate make the right decision in terms of their career move and help a client make a good decision in terms of the right individual to join them. So we'll be looking to highlight examples of that with questioning. We find that generally there'll be certain traits. So I mentioned earlier the curiosity element, and generally certain attributes of certain people with attributes of leadership will be comfortable talking about their failures, if you like, and where they changed tact, why they did, and using it to highlight a strength. So there's an element of how you frame it in that respect. There's nothing wrong with learning from mistakes and making sure that you change.
It feels like a really important mindset as well, because I think sometimes you can become so bogged down with wanting to get things right and kind of, feeling a sense of perfectionism and really wanting to make sure that we do that. But actually you almost learn more from the mistakes, don't you, than you do from what you get right the first time.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm told that that's the most expensive form of learning because you're doing it. So if you made mistakes somewhere else and it's on somebody else's dime, I guess, from an employer's perspective. But it is also you're demonstrating that authenticity. Nobody is perfect. And when it comes to moving roles and where you're going to enjoy working, it's about that personal dynamic between you and the people you work with as well. So generally the more we can help people be authentic and be themselves in these environments, which are quite high stress situations for interviewing and trying to find a new role, the better it is for everybody.
So we've had a question that's come through here, which kind of follows on quite nicely from that and also touches upon Shauna's comment about surrounding yourself by the right people. So I'll just read it out, which is, as a leader, how far do you think we can push or influence somebody into becoming a leader themselves, especially we can see the potential in them? Is it more about guidance, opportunity, or something deeper? Ben, I don't know if you want to go for that first, and then Shauna, you can add your kind of experience into that as well.
So I think people have to want to be a leader. When we say leader, that doesn't necessarily mean leading individuals or teams. So how can you push somebody into being a leader? Ultimately, as I say, from my perspective, that leadership element is about a vision and taking people on a journey. And it's not necessarily day-to-day managing people with tasks. But for anybody, I'd probably look to, if you feel whether they're a leader or a manager, is talking to them, asking them questions, being curious. What do they want to achieve? What are their ambitions? And how can you support them in that? But it doesn't matter how much potential one might see in somebody else. If that doesn't align with what they want to do or their ambitions, then I think it's probably on a road to nowhere. But mainly it's asking questions and supporting them and making sure that they feel that they're in the right environment to pursue anything they want to pursue.
Shauna, have you got anything you want to add to that?
I think sometimes having, like Ben just said, have the conversation, see if it's something they're interested in. It might not have been something they've considered. I hadn't considered working in quality until I got asked, did I want a 6 months secondment? And now I wouldn't change it. But at the same time, if it's something that really they don't think is going to float their boat, then maybe it's not the right thing to push for.
So it is kind of, isn't it? It's about aligning the opportunities and kind of what you see in others, but also in terms with what they see in themselves and what that looks like. And actually sometimes even having those conversations can open those doors to paths that they wouldn't have necessarily even realized were available to them. So hopefully that answers that question. Another one that's come through is obviously there's been a lot of talk about the different skills. Obviously, Shauna, the things that you kind of learned along the way, and Ben outlining some of the skills that and observations of what it takes to be a good leader. If you were to pick one core skill that kind of needed to work on first, and then potentially open the door to leading and acquiring the rest of them, what do you think you would prioritize? Or is that there's no kind of single answer to that? Does it depend on the individual?
One core skill, again, is trying to make sure that we're not that there is an understanding of the differentiation between a leader and a manager. But if you're going to be a leader, then I think the one, and I don't know if it would be a skill, but it would be a belief in what you're doing and why you're doing it, that internal drive to do it. So I'd probably say that, or actually the caring about others is a big part. I guess on the a lower level down is within our business, one of the hardest roles you have is a management role, and looking to move from a management role into a leadership role, because it's, to an extent, you can set a framework for a manager. You can manage people to manage, if you like, but the leader part, where you don't necessarily have that framework, you've got to be authentic, you've got to care and have quite a clear direction as to where you're going and why you're doing it. So that internal drive. Quite a long-winded answer, sorry.
Well, Ned, did you want to add to that?
I think for me, being able to be a good listener and understand people is really important, because you can lead as much as you want, but if people don't want to follow, they're not going to follow. They'll turn around and go a different way and they'll follow somebody else. Whereas if you have that empathy, what we've mentioned about before with people, and you genuinely care and you do listen to either what their problems are or what you want to work on, or just, how great the weekend's been. It's something what makes people think, yeah, you know what, actually they're a good egg, I'm going to follow them. That's the way we want to go.
Yeah, sorry, just on that, I think Shauna nailed that, in as much as, you can be whatever position you are in a company. People can follow anybody. So it may be that, you're I've got to be careful that it's not, you could be somebody with a year's experience in a company, fairly, not that traditionally senior, but people will follow you because, you have that authentic leadership. So it is about, as just said there, is people will follow who they want to follow rather than just because you tell them to do something.
We've actually just had a really interesting comment come through, saying, I've heard it said leaders are born and managers are made. I don't know if you want to comment on that, or whether or not we just leave that for people to have a bit of a ponder, because it's an interesting discussion, isn't it? That kind of whether or not actually leadership is something that is more innate and something that comes more naturally, and is then kind of enhanced with those kind of skill development and training and all of that kind of stuff. But there has to kind of be something there in the first place. I don't know what you think to that.
I think it's probably a pretty big topic
that we don't have time to go into in the last 4 minutes of this session. So we will leave that hanging there, Keith. But thank you for putting that in there for us to take away and think about. So I guess one final question before we wrap up, and I know a couple of people have asked about the map tool. So just to remind you, yes, we will share the link to that after this session with everybody who's attended, so you can take that away and have a go yourselves. But it's interesting that the kind of nuances between manager and leader and how they kind of can be distinguished, but also are so intertwined. But yet a lot of the language that we use is around management, and the jobs that we apply for do have the word manager in the title rather than the word leader in the title. And we've as we've heard today, you can be a leader without necessarily being a manager, and vice versa. So I just wonder whether or not leadership does feel like it's almost more of a hidden or unspoken skill. It's something that you know, it kind of comes out naturally, whereas a manager is something that is perhaps more finite and has stricter parameters around what success looks like if you are a successful manager.
Yeah, I mean, from obviously it is so easy to as you said, cross over between leaders and managers. I guess that throughout this, I've been trying to think, and I asked everyone about what a good leader is. You know, they have this internal, and it doesn't have to be an organization. It's not about a profit making organization. A leader has this drive, a belief, and a vision or goal that they will, no matter what, pursue. Whether they've got one person that's following them or 1,000 people following them, they're doing it for a different reason. And to an extent, I think, management is about possibly progressing. People believe that you need to be a manager to progress up a career path, when that's obviously not necessarily true at all.
And Shauna, any last comments from you on that?
I think I'd agree with Ben, to be honest, on that. I think a lot of times it's terminology we use as well. I think 10 years ago, would we have known what a leader was, or would we have just called them a manager? And is it just that we've changed the word and to make it kind of sound a little bit more, we'll include more of the soft skills in a leader than would be in what we would have originally named as a manager?
Really interesting there. Well, thank you both so much. I am mindful that we're almost out of time, so we will stop there with the questions. But Ben and Shauna, thank you so much for your participation and for your insights. Really, really interesting stuff.